Mr. Kephart. What college or university did you go to?
Well, I went to a couple. I went to, after high school, I went to St. John's College in Annapolis, Maryland
Okay.
for 2 years. And then I transferred to the College of William and Mary and graduated in 1968 with a bachelor's in Spanish. And after that, and after going into, I went into Peace Corps, I did some other things. Really, 10 years later, I went back to graduate school at the University of Florida and got my master's in Latin American studies and then my PhD in anthropology.
Anthropologists, they travel and stuff. Did you ever do that?
Oh, yes. When I was in the Peace Corps, I spent about 3.5 years in Grenada in the Caribbean. And for my master's degree, I actually went back, traveled back there to study the language that children spoke in school in the place where I was a Peace Corps volunteer, the same school where I taught, in fact. And then when I was doing my doctorate, I went back to the same place at the invitation of the Ministry of Education to do a project to see whether reading their language would help those children read better in standard English.
Okay.
So yeah, we traveled. We've also traveled. When I was a student, I traveled through the Caribbean, interviewing cane cutters who come up to Florida. Used to come up to Florida. They've ended that program, but they used to bring cane cutters up from Jamaica and other places, and have them work in the cane fields down around Lake Okeechobee.
Oh.
And like I say, they've stopped that program now. So, but we interviewed them in Florida, and then we followed some of them back to the Caribbean to see how their lives were back where they came from.
What made you want to teach?
What made me want to teach? I really don't know. Probably I've just always enjoyed sharing knowledge, sharing anything that I had, even starting back in elementary school, sharing, my friends and I would find animals, in the woods, and we'd bring them to school and share them with the other kids, and I've just always enjoyed that. So that's the main thing that I see is teaching is as sharing knowledge, sharing what you have managed to, been lucky enough to find out with other people.
Is anthropology the only class you teach?
Well, the one that you're in is the introduction, the big introduction. I teach also an introduction to linguistics,
Okay.
which focuses on language. We have another class that I teach once in a while that follows up on with language and culture. It talks about sociolinguistics, language in society, what the consequences are of not speaking standard dialects and things like, just all kinds of things like that. And then I also teach physical anthropology.
And what that consists of?
That's human evolution, human biology. It really has to do with a whole semester of the stuff we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. The primates, apes and monkeys, and the evolution, but we just go into we have a whole semester to do it, so we go into a lot more detail.
What attracted you to teach at this school?
At this school, I had in 1989, I was looking for a job. I was teaching at the University of Florida, but I couldn't teach there permanently because they usually don't hire their former students. Usually universities like to send their former students out into the world. So a fellow graduate student who majored in, who was actually a doctor in linguistics, but he had been in some classes with me, had been hired here in the Spanish program, and he was a linguist also. So he in 1989 he brought me over to work with him in the Spanish program, which was going to be a program with a heavy concentration on language and culture, and not so much of a concentration on literature, which many Spanish programs are typically. So he brought me over, and the idea was that we would be able to do things together as linguists. We'd be able to help each other out with publications and things like that. Unfortunately, he died the year after I came. He passed away in 1990. So that left me as the only linguist. But that's why I came, because he was here, he brought me over here, and convinced me that it would be a good place to be. So I stayed.
What is the hardest thing about being a teacher?
The hardest thing about being a teacher is probably grading. You know, if you could lecture and be in the classroom and interact with students and you didn't have to worry about ranking them and giving them A's and B's and all those things, it would be very nice. Grading is the hardest thing.
How do you cope with it? Like,
Well, you just do it. You grit your teeth and you try to do it as humanely as possible, or at least I do anyway. And you know, you know, sometimes you have to bite the bullet and do what you have to do.
what's the easiest thing about being a teacher?
Well, the easiest thing about being a teacher, for me, the easiest thing is just going into the class and talking about things. I don't seem to have any problem, as you know, going in and talking for 3 hours about something, if my voice holds out. But I don't seem to, you know, I seem to be able to do that without too much or too many problems, and I seem to be able to do it without preparing too much. I can at this point, after 25 years of doing this or so, I can kind of make notes as to what I have to talk about. I can go in and I can just talk about it, but I don't have to have it all written down.
Right.
Yeah.